Welcome to Cloud Talks, a series of conversations on decolonizing dance. Conversations with practitioners whom are based in the Netherlands. We bring you personal stories from our dance studio in Den Haag. Stories of dancing bodies reflecting on past experiences within dance institutions and looking deeper into their own personal and communal practices. Cloud Danslab is a studio space that exists for over 10 years, dedicated to research on body movement, facilitating residencies and classes. Connect with us on our website cloud@danslab.nl or our socials on Instagram and Facebook. Welcome, beautiful people. This is the third edition already of Cloud Talks, and I'm Fazle Shairmahomed, your host, and today is with me my dear friend and beautiful guest, Devika Chotoe. Welcome.
Thank you.
To this third edition indeed already. And yeah, we're going to talk about this big topic, right, of this series, decolonizing dance. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to us? What could it mean also for anyone out there, people who are in the field, who are outside of the field, who are in between that field? But maybe we could start with a short introduction about yourself, about who you are,
Yeah, so
where you are.
where I am. No, so I'm Devika Chotoe. I'm a performance artist, a choreographer. Recently also shifted into curating. Like I am busy curating an exhibition that will open in September, by the way. Self-promotion.
Let's all go.
And I'm also a community builder. I am the co-founder and treasurer of the Foundation Hindustan and Queer. And with this foundation, we aim to, put a spotlight on the Hindustani queer community and to contribute to us gathering together and creating spaces.
Well, look at us now here shining.
Right.
This is our spotlight.
Definitely. And what else? I mean, there's so many things that I do, but I think this encompasses it right now.
Beautiful. Thank you for this beautiful introduction. I mean, we go also already way back. We know each other for what, how many years now? 6 years, I think.
Yeah,
Something like that.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we met in ballroom, Vogue, ballroom scene.
Yeah. So I saw this weird creature with two flexible arms, and I was like, I need to hang out with that person.
Exactly. That's when our journey started. But then fast forward, I think we started with our first production, Anustan, together. And it's already now, it feels like such a long time ago. But that's kind of when we started. But so many things have been happening since then, I think, for both of us in our dance journeys, individual dance journeys. Our journeys have been coming together, but also the field has been moving around. But maybe you can share a little bit about your dance journey in life in general.
Yeah, that's such a huge question. My dance journey actually started when I was 3 years old. And my mom put me on Odissi, which is like one of the Indian classical dance traditions, with the aim to get to know something about my roots. And I think like she might regret this choice because now it led me to being a performer, and doing everything she actually doesn't want me to do. But I think practicing Odissi was my first encounter with the entanglement of spirituality and dance. When you practice this dance, the first thing you do is actually you start with a prayer where you acknowledge the floor, you acknowledge the lineage that you carry, the teacher who is in front of you, the audience members. So a seed was planted, I think, to situate myself and my dance always in relation to other components and to kind of like also decenter myself as a performer, which might be a bit of a paradox. But I think this was like the first seed of things that I'm still working with. And then I think these notions kind of reincarnated in my life in different forms afterwards. I also practiced capoeira, for instance, and that was my first encounter with kind of like belonging to a certain community within a dance, and kind of the politics of giving and taking space, being in the center, playfulness. But also, if you look at the history of capoeira, the entanglement of resistance as well in the form of dance. So I think there a seed was planted for my kind of activist self. And then after capoeira, I encountered many other communities that really shaped me, not only as a dancer, but also as a person. In the Netherlands, I encountered the underground clubbing battle scene, through hip hop, through house, through whacking, through voguing. And what those styles, but more than styles, communities actually gave me is freedom of expression, is being together and centering each other as well through these dance forms. And when you like study the history of these forms, where they like initiated, in which contexts, especially by Black and Latin queer communities, it's beautiful to kind of be aware of tapping into those forms of expressions that were initiated so many decades ago, and that we are still practicing that and kind of like reliving that. So yeah, I think the notion of spirituality, community, has always been very prominent in my journey as a dancer.
Wow. It's so nice to hear it like this. I mean, I know you, of course, already for some time, but hearing these come together, spirituality, community, activism, also makes so much sense, right? Why you always ask real questions. I think this is also something that really has drawn me towards you. You asking very real questions within the larger field of dance. So it to me, also knowing you as a friend, I feel it made a lot of sense to also expand these questions into other fields around, because as we both know, you're not only functioning within the field of dance, but also very much around it. So could you maybe also share how this has impacted your experience in dance, your experience also specifically to spirituality, activism, community in the dance field, how that has informed you in your broader practices that you also are concerned with?
I think all of the other spaces that I am creating, for instance, now as a curator in CBK, my point of departure is always the body in relation. And to kind of shift from this fixed image of a person, of an individual, and to invite collectivity into space. For instance, this exhibition now, it was very important for me to collaborate and to collaborate with people who also know each other already, because most of the artists present have been also building on top of each other and inviting each other in each other's practice. So, this, and other than that, I think also an emphasis on perception through the body, not only, I mean, you also know me, I've been fascinated with the notion of darkness for a long time now. And I think this is also very much rooted in feeling sensations of liberation in dark spaces, in clubs, where these communities that I was talking about initiated. So I want to kind of take these expressions, not bring them to the light, but kind of shapeshift them into other modalities that have to be felt. And I feel like, especially talking about politics or identities, all these huge topics, conversations very quickly become academic with a certain vocabulary, and therefore also exclude a lot of communities that we actually want to address. So I feel like sensorial communication is something that moves beyond the paradigms of these words and what the knowledge that we have kind of established together by using these hegemonic language.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, again, so much resonates with me. One of the things specifically around this topic of darkness, right, is this tension between, visibility and invisibility, right? Which is like very physically also just present in the space. I remember being in that performance of yours, and it was so powerful to just feel your energy shift in that space with all your strength. I think especially you were using whacking as a dance form or approach, but having that in the space and then slowly starting to see more of you, but by especially this close proximity or distant proximity from me as a spectator that you are very much playing with, for me tapped into this notion very clearly, this tension of visibility and invisibility. Could you maybe share a little bit more about that, what that means to you in general?
Visibility and invisibility.
Yeah, or is that, yeah, does it resonate with you as well that I have experienced it as such?
Yeah, I think being a brown feminine body in motion in the context of Western white spaces in the Netherlands and abroad, this tension is always there of being hyper visible and at the same time invisible, because in this context, what I am embodying, my legacies, my cultures, my traditions, they have been rendered invisible through colonial mechanisms and the present day reality. So it's a tension I personally navigate. And I think putting myself in darkness is kind of my strategy to close off the visual realm, and with that also the realm of meaning making and rational connotations, and invite perception that goes beyond what we know somehow. Because I do think when we tap into nonlinear time as well, there is a lot that we don't know. And when we want to build futures, just futures, when we want to initiate change, we have to tap into the unknown, because what we know now doesn't serve us. So I try to embody unknown, and I try to activate moments of being in the present, and maybe also destabilize myself to lose control, and what that means and what we find in these new spaces.
Wow. I mean, I just keep saying wow because the way you put your words in this conversation. I mean, I know already, even in your writing, in your performances, but also just now, but really, really. I mean, also please listen, because Devika and me obviously have been in conversation many times before, and one of those moments was in your podcast, Tranquil. So please go check that out as well, because there you can also find these ways of beautifully merging words in a very poetic way, asking beautiful questions. And many questions are coming to mind actually, and I feel we're very much already on topic, right? This notion of decolonizing dance, but to maybe ask you as well to make a bit more explicit how this process of decolonizing dance became a conscious practice for you. Or maybe we have to go even, I'm already looking at your face. I'm like, oh, we have to go a step back. Yeah, okay. What does decolonizing dance mean to you in the first place? Yes.
So disclaimer before I'm going to answer this. I've been sitting with this question today and yesterday, but for a while specifically, because the notion of decolonization is something that I've also been throwing around like candy, and I feel like a lot of people do that, just bam, label decolonization. So what I'm going to say might be a bit messy and at a loss for words, but I think that's what we should invite today. But I do feel that lately I've become a bit tired of using the word decolonization, or claiming that I decolonize dance. First of all, what do we mean with dance? I mean, are we talking about the ontological condition of dance, dance as like a institutional entity, my personal expression. So that's already complicated. But then also decolonization. I feel like every time I or we claim to put in decolonial work, we constantly depart from the colonizer or from, always situating our existence in relation to the colonizer, where I am at the point that I don't want to do that. I just want to exist. I just want to create work. I want to tap into my certain lineage, certain traditions. It happens to be that when I do that in the context of the Netherlands, it creates a ripple, it creates a certain reaction because it doesn't belong to the dominant canon. What is the English word?
Yeah,
canon. I don't know.
Canon.
Or like it's not like dominant references within the Western dance world that we navigate. So I do think that it can be perceived as decoloniality, but I don't necessarily frame it as such. I just want to exist, and I know that my existence has consequences for the spaces, the white spaces that I navigate. I also feel like when one is consciously busy with decolonization, it implies also a certain addressing of whiteness, of addressing white supremacy. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be occupied with that. I just want to, me and my people to shine and to take spaces and to exist. And I think that is already political enough. And I don't need these extra labels of decolonizing my practice, whatever that may mean.
Yes, statement. Yes, statement. Wow, complicating this conversation even more. What questions to ask next?
Yeah, because
no, but yeah.
I mean, I have maybe a counter questions. I think what I'm more interested in is how to measure change, social change, or the change we want to bring in these spaces. And if I look or if I observe what is happening now, the inclusion narrative is very prominent. Like these spaces, academia, theaters, whatever, they want to bring in all these like knowledges and artists who have interesting things to share. But I feel like what happens with this is that we take these colonial measures as bars that we, how do I explain this? So if this is equality and marginalization is here, the aim is this, but I'm like, what is beyond this measurement? Like, how do we really radically create our own spaces? Because inclusion will always be included in colonial frameworks, and I just question if you can decolonize those in the first place or to what extent. Example is also when you look at academia, you see all these new studies that are coming up, urban contemporary, expanded, blah, 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 I don't know, like, and then they invite people from the hip hop scene, the whacking scene, folking scene, and you can think of it as, okay, finally these styles or communities have recognition because they're included. But I'm like, what's happening now is you take these expressions, but you don't include the heartbeat or the soul or the reason why they were created, which is rooted in resistance. You like leave that out and you focus on form and you kind of polish it and you create little dancing machines that can move their body in spaghetti, in ballet, and also in popping and do a head spin, and you actually fuel more the machine that we actually want to get rid of. So it's complicated. So I see this happening, but then I'm also like, yes, people go get your coins, like train and
coins, access, but you're really addressing some very crucial issues. Right? I mean, they totally resonate with me. You mentioned something very specific that I find beautiful, that you really want to shift
beyond that space, beyond this paradigm, right, of colonial, decolonial, for example, or even that then maybe I would say invisible and visible, and it rather go into a space of creating and claiming our own spaces. You already tapped a little bit onto that, right, of how you do that yourself, but could you maybe share a bit more about how you create or claim spaces beyond? But maybe you can also, in that response, include the kind of challenges that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, I have all these beautiful words, but to be honest, I'm very complicit in perpetuating the same mechanisms, and I think this is what makes it complex. I mean, these structures are so like deeply embedded in the system, in how things function within myself as well, in relation as well. So I think a first step is having these kind of conversations and develop new language beyond words perhaps, share practices, practice what it means to be together and without the intervention of like bigger infrastructures. But yeah, I think there's also a matter of different timelines. There is this visionary in me who wants to go beyond. There is the reality that I still have to pay my bills and that I have to be complicit in these mechanisms as well. And for now, I do that exactly by taking space, by taking certain positions, and while being there, trying to redistribute as much resources as possible to my people.
But I feel also even when you're entering those spaces, those structures, mechanisms that are also very colonial or neo-colonial, I would say, within those spaces, you are addressing these questions as well. I mean, I know that because we've been talking about this before. So what happens there for you, also on a deeper level, on a very personal level, to be honest. So I'm not necessarily even asking what's happening for the field out there or what's happening for the institution, but what's happening for you, the moment when you start addressing these kinds of questions within those spaces.
Different things happen. Depends also who I'm talking to. For instance, recently I got into a beautiful position where I kind of have to, I mean, the aim from the side of the place where I work is to attract diverse audience into the theater. My aim is how do we, and they do this, by the way, with literal targets. Like when we talk, that's why I pose the question of how do we measure change. And for those institutions, it's often literally through numbers, a number of certain demographics in the audience, or as in the people they have employed. But for me, I'm more interested in the question of, instead of thinking of numbers, how do we build new partnerships or ways of collaboration with communities? Like how can we as a community literally just occupy these spaces, and how does it feel in our body to be there, to have these like prominent institutions and I don't know, use kind of subvert their meaning into building our own revolution somehow, even if it's just one time a week, being there and having your meeting, you know, these kind of little things. I'm also interested in little steps that we can take instead of like a bigger picture.
I think this is super, super interesting. I also remembered when we talked about this before that, like, why can we not use a prominent theater, for example, as a space for housing for refugees, for
Exactly.
example, or for homeless people, like the subverting of the function of such a space, right?
And there's so much, and not much happens after working hours. And they have a kitchen, they have studios, they have meeting spots, you know, like there's so many ways that we can use this building than just the function of a theatrical performance. So I think for me it happens in the little gestures, and I think subverting is a strategy that I implement in these spaces.
We both know that we can talk about this direction of the conversation for hours, but I also want to go a bit more back or deeper into your body, and also probably my body, because of course we're constantly kind of mirroring, mimicking, I don't know, resonating in many different ways. So maybe, how would I like to ask this question? Yeah, where does dance live for you right now in your body?
Where does dance live in my body right now? I mean, is there another place where dance can live other than your body?
It can,
Honey.
for example, it can live in the screen, it can live in the mirror, it can live on the internet, it can live, I mean, it can live in so many places, but I don't know. It's still your body. It's still, of course, there living in your body.
Yeah. Even this notion of dance, like on my way to this conversation, I saw a post, Anima, by the way, shout out to Anima. Anima Ruijsen posted something about how we name dance. And this post was from, I think from like a guru who teaches Indian classical tradition. And I don't do justice to the explanation that I'm about to give, but it was about why do we call dance, and why don't we specifically name the expressions? For instance, in these Indian classical traditions, you have multiple terminology to label expression. You can talk about communication, the dramatics. You have all these terms that I don't know at this point. So this question of where does dance reside, for me, I need to even go a step back further and ask, what do you mean with dance? Is it my expression through my body? Is it a certain style related to a community? I don't know.
I mean, you've already shared that you have been shifting in many different of those spaces, right? So dance has also been transforming constantly for you. So then then I would ask this question. So then where is dance for you right now? What is dance for you right now? I mean, I know you've been going through a very specific journey. And of course, you can feel like I'm asking questions, but we both know you have the space to also say, I don't want to go into that direction. Like, it's all fine.
No, like, I'm fine sharing it. I think today dance is a wounded child. And I'm trying to extend my hand and connect with her, but she's still a bit like closed off, hiding under the bed, something like that. And it has to do actually also with my journey in dance. At a certain point, I was dancing a lot, and it started to take over my life. I was constantly busy with dancing. At a certain point, also started to earn money out of being a performer and a dancer. Decided to also audition for dance academies, got accepted, the whole shebang. But I think because of this journey of kind of monetizing my communication and expression, I put a lot of extra pressure on my dance. And at this point, it has become, not an expression anymore. And it's a bit sad that I cannot tap into that because of when you're a professional, like, what does that even mean? But when you start to make money out of being a performer, there comes all of these extra layers that you put on your body, how it looks, how it moves, external and internal voices criticizing how you move it, how you should move it, that it's never enough. And this notion of not being enough is already something I think a lot of people of color or queer people struggle with in relation to their body in society. So dance has become, the space where I recreated a lot of the mechanisms I actually try to resist in the other spaces that I facilitate. So my relation to dance at the moment is very complex. But yeah, I mean, 2 days ago, I started a 30 days dance challenge with the intention to rewrite this narrative, to shift from being this harsh critic on myself into viewing myself from a place of love and abundance. Because I do think we have not been conditioned to even, for me at least, to feel that abundance is something for me reachable. In general, living a capitalist life, scarcity is always there. So I think it's very easy to embody this. And when you're an activist and you try to actually fight these mechanisms, it's complex to relate to abundance, to feel worthy of abundance as well, and being enough. So yeah, I'm in a journey where I try to connect more to dance, not from a infrastructural entity, but from my personal communication and connection. That was a very long answer.
No. I mean, that's what it's. I mean, again, we can continue to talk about this in so many ways. Again, it resonates a lot with me, right? I mean, even if I look at my own history of dance, it's been shifting so much. I like to speak in chapters for myself. There are chapters in life, and dance is actually just an element of it. It's never dance alone on itself, right? Like you also explain, we are having this conversation specifically about dance, but you are placed within a much larger world, and you have multiple functions and roles within society that have been morphing and shifting, transforming. And yeah, in that maybe then I also feel invited to ask that question more specifically also, where do you dance now, but also where would you like to find yourself dancing in the future? So is there a practice for you where you envision a future now for yourself in terms of space? And before you mentioned that it's very important to you to create spaces that move beyond the paradigms of colonial, decolonial. But again, where is then the place for you? How do you envision yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful question. And I think for some time now, I have neglected, or has to do again with this question of worthy or deserving. I think for some years now, while I was busy facilitating spaces mainly for other people, I put myself on the background because I felt like, what's the point of putting my body on stage? Like, what is liberation for that, for my community? Now I think differently about that. So yeah, I would love to actually move my body in spaces where people look more like me. That has been a very recent desire. Yeah, I'm literally talking about other countries where folks of color are like the dominant and I am not a minority. I think that it's something I cannot even put in words, perhaps, how that experience would make me feel, because my biggest reality so far is growing up in the Netherlands, creating art also in the context of the Netherlands, where I'm always a minority. And like I said before, whatever I do will always have an extra political layer that I might not have when I dance in, I don't know, India or something. And maybe there I can just tap more easily into joy and just being without having to also, have these kind of conversations or explain what I do, why I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I having a moment back in time a bit. It was during the after talk of Anushthan, I remember, but it was already happening in conversations we had. But this idea, right, of being a specific person of color within this country with a specific body, the ways in which we're being exotified or eroticized, but therefore also placed into a box. Like, so you have this particular South Asian body, so therefore you probably have knowledge about this and that in your body, and therefore you are expected or desired by an audience or maybe perhaps other dancers, choreographers, whatsoever, to perform your body in a certain way. And I remember that even though we made a work, Anushthan, which I called Decolonizing Ritual, and also centered around that history of our shared ancestry, around indentureship, that you also really clearly made that statement in the after talk. I do not want to be perceived as just merely an Indian dancer, right? And when you were just saying what you just said, basically, kind of then resonated with that what you said in the past. So it's kind of being able to go into a space where your body is the dominant one, or like people who look more like you, it's more the dominance, allows you to let go of that mechanism which is so dominant in this society that we live in. So I don't know, maybe do you feel that you have maybe had some such experiences, both on a local level here? I mean, I know you live in Amsterdam, we're in Den Haag right now, but perhaps also just in this country, or maybe in Europe or beyond, maybe in a specific community where you experienced it as such. I mean, you did share, of course, that you've been trained into in Odissi, a specific Indian classical dance. So I'm also assuming that it was mostly people with bodies who were very similar like yours, but at the same time, of course, again, it's taking place within a Dutch context. So again, trying to unravel a bit of those tensions there and how you've been shifting. I mean, you could say something about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think before I go enter this question, it kind of relates. Another desire that I have is to move my body outside of walls. And I know it's easy to say, okay, then go outside, go into nature. But even, I don't know, like living life in the capital city of the Netherlands, being outside, being in supposedly green, which are like city parks, which are like filled with tourists and noise and dirt, you know, like I feel like it has to do with the question of how do bodies relate in space, and how can changing space, changing environment also change your movement. I feel like part of my stuckness is also because I've been stuck within the same walls of a black box or a white cube, or clubs in the Netherlands, or these kind of dance studios. Of course, you can liberate yourself to a certain extent while you're busy, but I feel like I think I'm at a point, and I'm just discovering it right now in this very moment, that I need to change locations and receive more new inputs from space to also move or connect to my body in a different way, and to tap into unknown ways of moving my body. And I think that can only happen, maybe not even in the Netherlands, I don't know. Okay, completely off
No,
topic, but
no, not at all.
I just had this realization.
Yeah. No, I mean, not at all. I mean, again, right? I mean, I can ask a question, but you have totally the power to divert from it. Because, question is a question. But yeah,
Yeah.
what resonates with you in this very moment? I mean, again, many more questions are still coming up for me.
But if you talk about like feeling a sense of, let's say, belonging here in the Netherlands or what I've encountered so far, I think definitely, I mean, I don't want to like brush your ego, but you have definitely been an important person in creating these kind of spaces, and redirecting me to other people, to other communities who are creating similar spaces where you can feel a certain sense of belonging. So yeah,
Thank you, honey.
thank
Thank
you.
you. We both know this is actually our deeply ancestrally, spiritually rooted connectedness. as
Definitely.
well. Like for sure, it's been there from the beginning, right? I mean, even when we got to know each other, we didn't know each other that well. But then when we started working together in dance, kind of also shifting that into another dimension, creating together basically, we started feeling really like, okay, whoa, this is really something different. I mean, ballroom was cute, but that was really something like, whoa, what the fuck, okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's still ongoing in so many ways. But also from that space, this kind of ancestral connectedness that we have, and this spirituality, which you also mentioned, that has been very much have been forming you already from the beginning in your human life, but also very specifically through dance. What can you say about that and how you perceive this right now? Where is the space of spirituality or having a spiritual approach on your dance body practice?
Um, yeah, I mean, like I said before, at this moment, I'm in a very vulnerable state in relation to my dance, which also means in relation to the spiritual aspect of it. And I mean, like you said, it's a practice. So I know it's something I have to practice and I can eventually tap into again. But other than my own relation, I do think being in community has ignited this spark again. I'm talking about you, but also, for instance, Masala movement, this like group of Indo-Surinamese creatives. And there are so many people doing so many amazing things. And it's so inspiring to be in this energy of taking space individually and through that also collectively, because we are connected to each other. So yeah, that is mainly some kind of online realm, but we also meet in person, some of us more than others. And it has just been very nourishing to also learn and to tap into my own roots and relation to my to the history of endangered labor migration to Suriname and India and different practices through other people. Instead of me having to produce relations, I can also tap into how other people see things, and that also gives me a lot of insight. So my spirituality at this point is very much outside of myself, maybe a bit too much, but it's also a negotiation of inside, outside.
Wow. I'm going back to a memory of your graduation work in Muiderslot here in Amsterdam, right? In Muiden. What is the title of the work again?
Dedicatir.
Dedicatir.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that work already, the space itself was very interesting, right? I mean, we both, I mean, I also performed in that space, but a different part of that bigger, what is it? A slot, Buiderslot, castle?
Castle, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the work that you performed there, it was for me the first time to see it, and it was for me extremely powerful. Right? It was so layered as well, there was also very much a build up of ritualistically receiving people into the space, but then you very much going through a metamorphosis, literally, right? And of not only your body, but literally you were transforming the whole space. And I was, of course, fascinated by the way in which you were using your body in a very, how do you say, well, we're literally taking up space with your body, but also with your voice, right? And again, if I go back to that memory, I'm getting goosebumps because of the way that you are capable of completely shifting that space around and bringing, like, transforming a castle into in one way, a very dark space, which carried a lot of lightness in itself as well. So maybe we can also a little bit zoom in on that specific work of yours and what did you play out there also in terms of spirituality in your body, dance, voice, all these different elements.
Yeah, that work goes deep. Terikati translates as for your sake. And it's a very layered work. I mean, initially, where to start? The work was created against the backdrop of, thinking about the history of endangership. And I think I was reading the book Kuli Woman at that time, which I didn't finish because it was giving me nightmares. I was also reading it before going to bed, so I couldn't finish it.
Yeah. Could you also maybe just shortly share a little bit about what indentureship is for those who don't know? A short. Yeah, can we do it in short?
Yeah, I mean, the indentureship was basically, a system replacing, replacing slavery or like that structure. I'm also bad with like the historical accuracy of explaining these things, but basically, when slavery was abolished, it got replaced with a system of indentureship, and people were taken from, if I talk about Dutch colonialism, people were taken from India and China and Indonesia to work on the fields of the formerly enslaved. Under the premise of that it was a contract, so it was like consensual, but actually, there's a lot of things written about how consensual it was and what the suffering was also on this journey of the ship, but also in life after.
And of course, it was in many different Dutch former colonies, right? So indeed in Suriname, where both our ancestors kind of have arrived to, but also South Africa.
Definitely.
And I think in Kuli, like many other places as
Guyana.
well. Guyana, exactly. Yeah. We can make a whole list in the Caribbean, Fiji, Mauritius. Specific people of Indian descent have been really shipped all over the world, also by the British mainly. But Kuli woman she specifically, of course, her ancestors who are Gayatri Bahadur, to Guyana, right? Yeah, so neighboring country of like what we call British Guyana. There's French Guyana, but anyways, to British Guyana. But let's go back to the book and the inspiration, or kind of to your work.
Yeah, so I was reading this book and I think I literally cried while reading. And you read about, I'm specifically talking about the perspective of the women. You read about what they have to endure on the ship, and even before, like what they had to endure on the land already. The losses, this like talking about unknown, this kind of crossing of the ocean, not knowing where they would land and what would await them on this land as well. But yeah, that book really describes in detail some very heartfelt things, and I felt like I need to mourn somehow. I need to mourn loss, the people lost, but also it made me reflect upon growing up in the Netherlands and losses I carry within myself, like this failure to grasp even this history, or to grasp what was perhaps taken from me, even though I also know a lot was given at the same time. But there will always be things that I cannot tap into because of this history. Mourning loss, also very literal. I mean, I've experienced death at quite a young age. Yeah, specifically my father as well. I've had an abortion, so yeah, and death has been very present, and I needed to mourn known and unknown entities and people and histories. And I could not verbalize all of this. I could also not dance it even. So yeah, using my voice and the poetics of not using language, but just making sound, vibrating within your body, the body that holds so much history and traumas as well, and all of this that I'm mourning, also the people that I mourn, it's in my body as well. So I felt like I can only do justice through like activating it with vibrations through the use of my voice. So that was the decision to use voice. Yeah, also because I grew up with a lot of silence culture. It's very prominent in our culture in general. So I felt like my antidote to this is making sound, using my voice. So I needed to also break with certain silences that have been carried intergenerationally as well. Yeah, and then, I mean, it comes with layers, and that's why I also literally layered myself. And I was with a loop station, and I reacted to myself, to certain sounds that have been vibrating from different body parts. I've been trying to imagine or tap into ancestral voices and what they could look like through using my body as a vessel somehow. And yeah, just, I mean, mourning or wailing is a whole practice. People really practice it, and I needed to feel what it feels like to practice mourning through the sound. Up until now, I've been mainly writing or dancing when I feel grief, but I think making sound is a whole nother dimension somehow. Yeah, that in a nutshell.
Wow, I mean, but think helps me also so much to reflect together with you on that process, right? This journey of also what I was witnessing, because indeed, that's also one of the things that fascinates me about you. Of course, you're a very multi-talented and multifaceted person, as we know. But to see specifically in a context of a dancer, performer, that there are different ways of expression that you can still are incapable of using, right? That you don't need to express everything only into the dance, and you actively create space for yourself to put it into a voice practice that's still in the body, but that you can respond with to yourself in different ways. And you explained that it comes from a practice of mourning and wailing, but there was also celebration in the end of that ritual. And bringing this together in a performative, ritualistic space, for me, placing then in a larger question of what does spirituality mean in dance, really opens up so many doors, right? Because so often we want to fixate into, okay, but it's now just a moment for this part, and I can just be this element of myself. But what you've been really given with that work of yours, and I think in general with the practice that you're doing, and decolonial is definitely a very limiting word, but it is a way of describing a part of it, but it's way more than that. But it's definitely a beautiful example and invitation for people as well to, envision ourselves, our bodies into these multi-layered rituals. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think, I see it as, I use my voice, but it's movement. Sound is also still very much movement. And I think if we talk about decolonization or whatever we want to label, the importance is to not get stuck in these rigid ways of how we have been doing things, but to invite movement, whatever form that may be, and to embody that and to let it resonate in our bodies, in space, with each other. Vibrations can literally change your DNA, so it's very powerful to vibrate together. So, movement, we have to move.
On that last note, it's definitely not the last note. I'm joking. Conversation is going to be continued for sure. But I do think this is a really powerful message as well, right? To continue vibrate together, and also to discover with each other what the vibration means with our bodies, beyond our bodies, creating spaces, moving beyond those paradigms that we've been talking about in so many ways. Thank you so much for this conversation. Really, this is
thank you for inviting.
It's been such an exciting journey already, just getting to know you in life and connecting and creating together. And we know this is just a chapter, this very moment. So let's go on to next chapters.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow I think, what the fuck did I say yesterday?
But as I already mentioned before, there is a podcast as well that we have been doing before, which is a podcast series by Devika Chotoe, Tranquil. So also check that one out. And this one, as I said, is the 3rd edition. There will be at least 3 more editions in the coming time. And the next ones, I'm already just going to give you a bit of teasers. It's going to be with Anima Jaguru Ruisen, who was also mentioned by Devika Chotoe, with Monique Duurvoort, and also with Cherise and Janine Strang, 2 sisters. So you will hear more about that very soon. Thank you so much for listening, for watching this episode. And please leave in the comments, contact us, find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, and connect with us. Ask your questions, share your thoughts, your visions, and let's continue to build this conversation wherever you are in the world. Cloud has been existing for quite some years right now. I think it's about 12 years that we exist, but the space itself has been existing even for a longer time. And in this space, I really myself have built a beautiful journey of dance, of moving together with people, of having conversations through residencies, inviting people from abroad. So also feel invited yourself to come to our space physically as well, to do a residency. I feel that we are very accessible. So reach out. And again, thank you so much for watching and listening, and see you next time.
Please do check out our other episodes of Cloud Talks. Don't forget to check the links below this episode for more information on today's guest, and make sure to check out or subscribe to our socials. We would also love to hear your thoughts in the comments.